we're now ready to begin. Thank you for your patience. We're now ready to begin the second workshop. If we were to run out of time in this workshop, we can always extend it to the next meeting. Hopefully we'll be able to get through the bulk of the information, but I do not want anyone to feel rushed as we go through it. So we can reschedule for the second part of it. We're not in a hurry about this. So thank you all for your patience. We just felt that was a very important discussion that we needed to complete this evening. So at this point, City Manager, I'm going to turn it over to you, Mr. White.
Thank you, Mayor. Sometime back when we was looking at rates at the end of the fiscal year, first of the fiscal year, we decided that we wanted to look at doing a rate study to evaluate our rates where we're at, because it had been 10 years since they've been looked at other than tracking the CPI. The city went into a contract with Stantec, and we have them here tonight. There is no decision that needs to be made tonight, and I encourage you to listen to what Peter has to say and take in consideration, where we're going with the city, the development of the city. However, I do want to also make you think, one of the things that I have looked at with the rates, this actually lets us know where the rates need to be. Now, the actual design of that rate is a different story. So one of the things before I ask you to vote on these rates, I probably will bring to you to ask you to allow me to do a rate design, because that has not been touched either. So we will be able to tie it all into one nice package, and it'll be easier communicated to the citizens, as well as any questions you may have. So with that, I'm going to ask Peter to come to the podium if he would, and start his presentation. And once again, this is Peter Napoli.
Napoli.
Napa, okay.
Yeah, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Peter Napoli. I'm here on behalf of Stantec Consulting Services, and I'm here to give a brief presentation presenting the results of our water and sewer revenue sufficiency analysis that we conducted for fiscal year 2018. And like Mike, the city manager, alluded to, this looks at your rates at the current structure without any changes, and purely the ability for them to sustain your cash flows throughout a projection period. So the project team for this study included myself as a consultant, James Martin, who's accompanying me today over here as an analyst to support the financial modeling, and Eric Van Malsen, who would like to extend his apologies. He couldn't make it here today. He actually came down with the flu, like you mentioned one of the commissioners did, so he's in no condition to be here. All right, so moving on. This is just a little agenda. I'm sorry, it's coming up a little faded, but you should be able to see it. So like I said, brief presentation, a short introduction, background, if you will. Then we'll jump right into the financial plan, and then we'll end with any questions, concerns that you may have. So our background, some of you may know us. Formerly, we went under the name of Burton & Associates, a small firm that has been operating as a financial rate and assessment consultant in Florida for 29 years now, under Michael Burton. Just this past year, we were acquired by Stantec, which is a huge engineering conglomerate company, and we operate underneath their financial services umbrella. So it's the same team delivering the same studies to our clients in Florida, just with a bigger backing. We actually previously conducted this study for the city in 2010, and the results of that study were a recommendation of 4.5% increases throughout fiscal year 2012 to fiscal year 2020. What actually ended up happening is you tracked your increases to the US CPI. That's spelt wrong. That's a CIP. CPI, which is the Consumer Price Index. And the Water and Sewerage Index basically tracks the cost of water and sewer service across the country and averages it. So you were keeping in track with that to adjust for the rising costs associated with inflation, et cetera. The rate increase for this current year was put on hold, so there was no rate increase for fiscal year 2018. And it was put on hold to await the recommendation from this update. So we're calling it an update because basically we used your old data, we refreshed it with all the new budget data, all the historical audited results from fiscal year 2012, 13, 14, 15, 16, and then the most up-to-date results from fiscal year 17, and then the budget put in place for fiscal year 18. So we use those historical results to analyze a trend, and then we use all your current data, review it with staff in interactive work sessions to figure out which things are extraordinary events that maybe we shouldn't project into the future, etc. So the key issues that we determined in this financial plan update were, for one, keeping pace with the escalating operating costs, which you've done in the past with tracking your rates to the CPI. Maintaining adequate debt service coverage, you have some debt service in those funds. Maintaining operating reserve levels above the minimum target, which is currently at 6 months of operating O&M expenses. And then affording and allowing the enterprise fund to afford significant capital improvement projects within this projection period. So there's a list there of some key projects that the city needs to undergo to maintain the infrastructure of the utility. And you could see that there's some big dollar amounts on there. So the rates have to support these projects and the debt service that may be associated, because they're not all going to be cash funded, especially the upgrade to the existing alternative water treatment plant, which is $25 million. So the rates have to support that. They have to support the adequate debt service coverage related to the debt that will fund these projects, et cetera. So the objectives, as I've said, were to calculate rates that would achieve and maintain this debt service coverage, maintain the reserve target, and manage the capital financing plan. So our models optimize the different funding sources for capital plans. You could fund capital plans through cash, through debt, through impact fee funds, and that's pretty much it. So our models optimize that mix so that you can do it in the most affordable way and with the least amount of pressure to ratepayers. So these are the results of our study. We found that the city would need 3.5% increases beginning in this year, which we suggested that you'd have a mid-year rate increase, and the model takes that into consideration. And the 3.5% increases would need to be sustained throughout the 5-year planning period. So that relates to about a $2.25 increase to the monthly bill for a resident in Lynn Haven, which is based on about 5,000 gallons of usage. Okay, so this is our Financial Analysis Management System Control Panel, the FAMS panel. I know it's a lot to look at first, and I'm going to walk you through the important parts. So at the top there, you can see the first 2 blue rows are the recommended rate increases, the 3.5% throughout the projection period for water and sewer. You can see that relates to a bill increase of about $2, as we've already discussed. It maintains the reserve target. So if you focus your attention on that graph in the upper left-hand corner, it's the operating fund graph. Those blue bars represent your operating fund balance. The line that goes across the graph represents the target for your operating reserve fund balance. So oh yeah, that's true. Here, I can point. So this is the line that represents your minimum target for your reserve balance, And these are the projected levels of your reserves. So as you can see, we're beginning a good amount above your reserve target, but quickly it's spent down because there's significant capital investments, and a lot of them have been optimized to be cash funded in the near term. So you can see that spending down, and then throughout the projection period, it just meets your reserve target, which is exactly what you want to do. You don't want to make more money than you need to make off your ratepayers, and you don't want to make less money than you need to make. So let's go to the next call out. All right, here you can see if you go back up to the top of the graph, the next blue line is the senior lien debt service coverage calculation. This calculates your coverage in each year with your revenues and your available fund balances. As you can see, it's very strong coverage in this scenario. I believe your minimum coverage is 1.5. We set the target at 2.0, which is it's optimum when considered by rating agencies. And then the next line here is the subordinate debt service coverage, which is also very strong. And that represents subordinate debt service coverage, just another term for SRF debt service. The next call out here, we're just calling out the increased CIP, especially in the latter half of the projection period. You can see those bars going up quite significantly there. This middle graph, it's partially covered by this call out, but that says borrowing. This represents the borrowing that the model has calculated to fund that capital improvement program. And these are approximations. Obviously, for some capital improvements, you're probably not going to issue debt year after year. There's going to be some bundling involved, et cetera. But this is basically showing that with this borrowing, you can still maintain more than adequate debt service coverage. This middle graph here, the top middle graph, this shows your cash flows represented by these lines. So the red line here represents your cash out, including CIP. The blue spotted line here, dashed line, represents the operations and maintenance expenses, or operations and maintenance cash out. So that's purely keeping the lights on, keeping the people paid, etc. And then the green line, which is covered in the out years, but you can see it in the beginning, represents all the cash in, from the rates, the miscellaneous fees, etc. So you could see in the beginning that red line exceeds the green line, and that's why these fund balances are spent down. This is just a graph showing the US CPI. On average, over 10 years, the increase is 5.7%. So when comparing that to 3.5% rate increases, your utilities managed quite responsibly for you to be able to deliver services at a lower rate increase than the US CPI. This is a comparison of your water bill rates at 5,000 gallons. So it's the estimated single-family residential water bill, and it includes your current water bill at $26.63, and then it includes the proposed with the 3.5% rate increase in comparison to some similar municipalities in the region. And we have the same here, which you can't really see the other municipalities that kind of got faded out. But this is for the sewer rates, and that has your current estimated sewer bill at 5,000 gallons, and then the current and then the proposed sewer bill at 5,000 gallons. This shows it on a combined basis. I believe that's $63.99, and that's going to $66.24. And then you can see that you're in a pretty good spot when compared to other municipalities. and you're still staying in the middle of the group, well, you start at the low end of the group, and then you kind of get into the middle with the proposed rate increase. And with that, I'll just summarize with a few conclusions and recommendations. The budget, the current budget, and projected forward with cost escalation rates, salary increases, all of that assumed, and the current capital improvement program in place will require these 3.5% annual rate adjustments. If those were not to happen, either of the two will need to be changed. They'll be affected by that. Either the capital improvement program will be adjusted, or your ongoing operating budget will need to be adjusted. Oh, and like I said before, the fiscal year 2018 rate adjustment is assumed to happen as soon as possible, mid-year. I think that's March 1st. And then going forward, each rate adjustment is assumed to happen the first day of the fiscal year on October 1st. The 3.5% adjustments are less than the average annual water and sewer CPI index. And the planned expenditures with this rate plan still achieves the targets for debt service coverage, needed capital investment in the city, and maintains your minimum reserve balances of 6 months operating expenses. Oh, and that's it. Now I'd like to open it up for questions and discussion. Yeah.
Thank you so much for that presentation. Very informative. We really appreciate your patience as well, sitting to wait to give it this evening.
Thank you.
Are there questions from the board regarding this presentation? Let me start with Commissioner Tender. Do you have any questions?
I don't believe so. I think I'm going to wait until later.
Okay. Commissioner
Thank you.
Commissioner Barnes?
Yes, ma'am, I do have a question. Peter, are you saying that at this point we will not look at the CPI and just go with a 3.5 increase across the board?
Yes, that's what we're suggesting.
Okay, so if we did look at the CPI, what would that rate increase be compared to your recommendation?
Well, it depends on what numbers come out, but on average over the last 10 years, it was 5.7%. So it could be larger rate increases than what we're suggesting.
Okay, all right, thank you very much.
Okay. Commissioner Friend?
Thank you, Mayor. Not really a question. I just want to say thank you very much for the presentation and all the hard work that you did on this. It's very exciting. Actually, I know the past study was 4.5%. This is, if we're looking at 3.5%. I like getting away from CPI. It's too flexible. It's too floating. I think this is, it's there. It's set, secure. The only thing I would say, now is I know we're looking at a 10-year time frame. I like a 3, 5, and 10-year planning strategy. So I would just want flexibility in there somehow as we get further down the road, City Manager, that we look at it maybe, a 3 and a 5, certainly a 5, about the halfway point, because 3.5% increase for 10 years, that's pretty strong. There's a lot of studying going into that, but there's a lot of there's a lot of flexing in there as well. 10 years can be a long time, and when you're dealing with numbers.
Yeah, I would agree with that completely. We actually only have the 3.5% for the 10 years just for that presentation purpose.
Okay.
In our report where we recommend a rate plan, it's usually always a 5-year rate plan. But we always recommend looking at rates every 1 to 2 years. Right. And we do it for a lot of cities where we'll do quick updates. Since the model's already built, we already have your data, it's a lot quicker to update every 1 to 2 years than it is to every 6 to 7 years. Right. So we would always recommend looking at rates at least, within the 3 to 5 year window.
Great. Thank you very much. And Mayor, just one last thing. I know City Manager and I have already met. I'm very excited about the opportunity of having a new rate design. I know it was one of the goals of the commission to stop transferring money from the enterprise fund to the general fund. We've been able to do that. It's very exciting. The next thing on our list, I think, was we collectively say that or at least I can only speak for myself, I wanted to stop transferring money, within the enterprise fund, make it cleaner. And I think by a different rate design, the way we design our rates or something like that, and of course city manager and I spoke about that, that might be a way for us to be able to do that. So it's just so it's cleaner and more transparent within a budget. Of
That study would achieve exactly that outcome.
Great. Thank you, sir. Appreciate it, and thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Commissioner Russell?
Thank you, Mayor. All I've got is thank you for coming, and you've already answered the questions that I had, so thank you.
Pleasure to be here.
Thank you so much. Do we have any comments or questions from the public? Mrs. Walker?
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Janet Walker, 1106 Michigan Avenue. I apologize for coming in late. This might have been covered already. Can you tell me the cost that this study was? The cost of the study?
Mr. White? Wasn't it 30? That was 30.
I think it was 22, 23,000. I have to look, but it's
23-ish?
yes, ma'am.
And I'm confused. Why would you get involved in that?
This includes all the capital improvements that we have to do to the water and wastewater plant.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Are there any other questions or comments from the public regarding the rate study? And there appear to be none. Anybody else? Anything for the good of the cause? Yes, sir. Go ahead, Mr. Napoli.
I just wanted to thank you guys for your time.
Thank you very much. We appreciate your efforts. And have a safe journey home as well. Okay, at this time, I would like to close this workshop, and the regularly scheduled City Commission meeting will begin at 6 o'clock, so I'll just wait until 6 o'clock in case anyone's running a little bit late. So thank you all for being here, and thank you for your patience.